Hey, church family. This is a big week, isn't it? This weekend, we celebrate Father's Day. Yesterday, we shared some exciting news about Jake and Becca's new path in ministry. And just a few weeks from now, we are planning to reopen for socially distanced in-person services on July 5th. I want to dig a little bit deeper into each one of those just real quick in this update. First of all, our reopen on July 5th. I want to reassure you that there is no pressure to return to in-person services if you still feel uncomfortable being around others. We will continue to invest more and more into making our online experience better as the weeks go by. We will continue to focus on engagement in the online and in-person services, which the in-person services will happen at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. so that those who are comfortable feeling like they can come back can experience the proper social distancing protocols. Because of these protocols and some other changes, I do want to prepare you that things will likely feel a bit different when you come back. We have removed the pews and set groups of chairs 6 feet apart, spread throughout the sanctuary. We're working to redesign the stage, get curtains up on the windows, and reconfigure the in-room lighting to allow for a later shift to simultaneous live and online experiences. Guidelines discourage gathering in the halls before and after services, so seating areas have been removed for safety. Families will, for a time, be worshiping together, with altitude kids returning at a later date once it is wise to do so. We also want to emphasize that we as a body will be flexible. There are still many who are predicting a second wave later this year. Also, some churches that have reopened in the last few weeks across the country have had cases occur in their churches and have subsequently returned to an online-only setting. Flexibility will be one additional key to our safe gathering. We simply don't know what this next season will look like. What we do know is that God is in control. These pandemics don't scare him or frustrate his plans. In fact, while God didn't cause these pandemics, he does promise that he will use them for our good and for his glory. In fact, we're already seeing some great ideas happening from within the congregation. One of our leaders, for example, has begun opening his house up to no more than 10 people on a Sunday to watch the online service together, have a meal, and then discuss what God is doing in everyone's lives. This is exactly the sort of gathering that can take our online and in-person gatherings and combine them for that life-giving in-person element, while still allowing for smaller gatherings and proper social distancing/safety. I can't encourage you enough to gather safely and properly in a friend or family member's home this Sunday and experience the service together in a new and different way. This Sunday, as we celebrate Father's Day, we will have a very special conversation between myself and Pastor Bobby Washington of our East Denver Church of God. This conversation will pick up where God led us last week to seek better understanding of one another, particularly in the area of race relations. How amazing would it be to gather in a group of 5 to 10 people with proper safety measures in place and watch that conversation together and then engage it, discuss it, dive into it, and apply it to your life. That is the best combination of worship service and life group that I can personally think of for this season. Now, in order to make our in-person services happen, we're going to have to reset some additional expectations. As we shift our culture and our relaunch, one aspect of that culture shift is that everyone who follows Jesus follows him in serving. A couple months ago, another pastoral leader and I were talking, and he explained it to me better than I've ever heard. He said, when we serve, we are being John the Baptist. We are preparing the way for Jesus to work in people's lives. And that is so true. Each of us has a role to play in preparing the way for Jesus to work in the lives of others. As we come back to our socially distanced in-person services, we're going to need your help to prepare the way. Because of this, we're going to have a special gathering on Sunday, June 28th, that is the Sunday before we reopen, for those who are ready and willing to come and help out with our in-person experience. On that day, we'll gather at 9 a.m., the time our first service is going to start as we reopen. But rather than worship together at first, we're going to take that hour to go over what our new safety, cleaning, distancing, and other protocols will look like in this next season. At 10 a.m., we'll worship together by watching the online service in the sanctuary, and then, after that online experience together, we'll practice what we've learned by doing a deep cleaning of the building. Again, if you're willing and able to serve and prepare the way for Jesus to work in people's lives, I want to invite you to a special gathering, June 28th, the Sunday before we come back in person, where we will go over what it takes to make in-person services happen, experience the online service together, and then do our first deep cleaning together. Finally, I want to share my excitement over the news that we shared yesterday. In case you missed it, Pastor Jake and Becca will be candidating this coming weekend at Stratton Church of God for the position of lead pastor. I've been walking with Jake in this conversation for a little while, and I want you to know that our elders, our state leader, and the board and leadership of Stratton Church of God, a sister church of ours here in Colorado, believe that this is a God moment for both of us. Altitude Church is a place where we train people to follow Jesus into what he is calling and equipping them to do to further his kingdom. And while we hope this usually means they find a place to plug in at altitude, we're open-handed to God's best. And we believe that this is God's best. God has been preparing Jake and preparing Stratton in ways that we couldn't have tried to control to happen as they have. This is a God moment. Now, of course, this does leave some questions about what our next season will look like. Actually, let me say it this way. It adds some questions. Because let's remember, no one knows what this next season is going to look like. We are continually stepping into the uncharted. So to understand what happens next, allow me to share a bit of our path so far. Last year, as we were planning our Uncharted campaign, our plan was that our existing worship arts pastor would remain in place, and we would stretch to hire Jake in as our next generation's pastor, working with kids and overseeing our youth leaders to ensure that those two ministries flowed logically and wisely together. When we had to let go of our worship arts pastor, things shuffled to where Jake was going to fill in leading worship, something he had never before done in his life, while we entered into this Uncharted campaign. And as you know, this past year has been one of great twists and turns. Our Uncharted campaign was a success, but we also stepped into conversations that were allowed by that with the Arvada Church of God about merging. And that discussion went quickly, and the merger happened beyond our expectations. We stepped continually into the uncharted. And as we did, our plan shifted with each new step that God took us to. We voted together to take a new path. Rather than trying to revitalize two aging and declining churches, we would enter a season of preparing, leading to a relaunch as Altitude Church, where we have this 190 plus years of history that we cherish, but also a brand new day ahead as a new church. A big part of that plan was, is, and continues to be that as we sell our Sloan's Lake property, which should be under contract this week, we would begin looking for a worship arts pastor who would previously be out of our two churches' reach. That is, a person who's worked in a dynamic and growing church that has already been some of the places that God seems to be leading us. This person would already be well experienced in leading not just a team, but growing teams for worship, focusing not only on our in-person experience, but also dynamically coming up with new ways to engage our online congregation as well. At such time, Jake would then be able to finally focus fully on the next gen ministry. As we've mentioned, however, COVID has reshaped the landscape and is reshaping the landscape continually as we speak. While it's still our vision to have a second to none ministry to kids and teens, what that looks like is uncharted right now. As we excitedly, but at the same time with a tear in our eye, empower Jake to take this next step in ministry, I want to reassure you that God is in control. I know we've gone through a few changes in our worship ministry over these past couple of years. However, we are also seeing the uncharted steps we are taking, leading us to even more uncharted places. Your elders and staff continue to be in conversation about what our gatherings as the church will look like in this reshaping landscape. And that holds true both for our online and in-person experiences. Because a part of the changing landscape is that online can no longer be considered optional or secondary for us. There will be many who, for a number of factors, cannot or will not come back to in-person gatherings for another year or two as herd immunity or vaccines come more into focus. So I say all of this to say that from where I sit, I see God at work in powerful ways. We couldn't have anticipated what we would need in June of 2020, let alone what we will need into this ongoing and reshaping landscape. But God knows. I believe that God is not only preparing us, He's positioning us to be able to pivot and reflow so that the unchanging gospel is able to be presented in new, renewed, and continually relevant ways. In many ways, this has been a difficult 18 months, that's for sure. But I believe with faith, hope, and even the slightest bit of insight that God is doing something in our midst that will transform us from two declining churches that were struggling to survive to a renewed ministry in our community that points people to the hope that can only be found in Jesus in ways we have been preparing for and ways we also couldn't have even known beforehand that God has been working in us to accomplish. The best is yet to come. God is doing above and beyond all that we have asked for or imagined. It's not yet clear how all of the pieces of the puzzle are going to fit together, but God is telling us, I know the plans I have for you, plans for good and not for evil, plans that give you hope and a future. It's a hard season in our world, yes, but it is also one that is pregnant with anticipation of what God is doing. And we are going to continue to walk in pregnant anticipation, one step at a time, into the uncharted, knowing that God is taking us. Not that He's going to take us, but He is already taking us into the above and beyond, the uncharted. So keep praying for each other. God is at work. He's ready to use you in new and exciting ways to have a transformational impact on our city, one person at a time, by helping them become more like Jesus. Church, I'm excited for what God's doing, and I hope you'll join me in that excitement as well. I want to invite you to Father's Day this Sunday, an important conversation between two pastors of different colors about how we can understand one another more. I'm excited to share that with you.